And at 10, William Afton. I've said it before and I'll say it until the day this stops being an issue. Springtrap contains the body of William Afton inside. We see Purple Guy run into the Golden Spring Bonnie suit at the end of Five Nights 3, where due to the moisture in the air and William's rush, he ended up getting trapped inside thanks to the spring locks, and then he ends up collapsing, but take note, we never really see him die. He's just twitching, as he was in the trailer to that game, and while yes, Michael may be literally purple now, as his flesh decayed after Ennard entered him in sister location, just because he's literally purple doesn't mean he's the killer. And just because when Michael says, "I'm going to come find you" at the end of sister location, and then Springtrap appears, that does not mean that Springtrap is him. We see that Michael was at sister location, and this camera movement takes place at Fazbear Fright. That was burnt down by Henry in an attempt to kill William because we all know who did it. William is inside Springtrap, not Michael. Scott even confirmed this when talking about MatPat's timeline after Ultimate Custom Night came out, saying if you're hung up on the whole Will Trap versus Mike Trap debate, watch MatPat's video. And in that video, MatPat says that it is indeed William in the suit, not Michael. There you go, please stop. And at 9, it's a suit. While the Springtrap suit contains William's body, it is still a suit. The Golden Bonnie animatronic was a springlock suit, which as Phone Guide tells us is a specially designed suit that doubles as both animatronic and suit. Meaning that the springlock mechanics in the Golden Bonnie suit would retract like some form of even more complex Iron Man and create enough room for a person to climb inside and wear like your normal Chuck E. Cheese suit. Obviously, they weren't amazingly designed since there were some flaws. Like when they get wet, the spring locks can close easily, which is why Michael got bit in FNAF 4 and why William got snapped while in the suit. The suit also is clearly meant to be a suit since it has 5 fingers and 5 toes, which the other suits are lacking in favor of 4 fingers and 3 toes. It's even more clear when looking at the secret menu screens for FNAF 3, where on rare occasions you can see a skinless William Afton trying to get out of the suit by prying the head open. Yeah, it's weird. And at 8, secret room. All Freddy Fazbear locations had a secret room, a room that was secret because it was invisible to the animatronics, meaning that while every other room was programmed into their pathfinding, this room wasn't, and because it was never mentioned to any customer. Only employees that were around before they sealed them up. Why did they seal up these rooms? Because William Afton was stuck inside one, and if they just closed the one, that would look kinda suspicious. He was twitching in the Spring Bonnie suit. This is seen in the FNAF 3 final minigame where we see William run into the suit and then collapse. This is the safe room as indicated by the fact that the Shadow Freddy can find it, but you as an animatronic are physically unable to enter because your pathfinding doesn't allow it. William uses this to hide inside and then dismantle you as you try to find him, but he ends up unintentionally releasing the spirits of the children he killed. After he gets snapped in the suit, they fade away, but are only really put to rest when you get the good ending and give Golden Freddy the party she wanted, even if it's not enough for her to let go, which is kinda salty. I mean, like, it must have been a really bad cake. Come on, puppet. Chop chop. And at 7, Papaphobia. Papaphobia is one of my all-time favorite fears, because it's the name for the fear of the Pope. Yes, the Pope. Like Vatican Big Hat Pope. It wouldn't really explain anything in the series or make much sense, like there's basically no evidence for it, but William killing people is like one of the biggest sins, right? So, such an unholy act and unholy man being scared of the most holy man in existence is kind of logical in my eyes, right? Is it just me? Like, this seems like the most realistic weird fear that he could have. And by weird, I mean something so odd that I want to talk about it. Like the fear of peanut butter being stuck to the roof of your mouth. I love phobias. I don't know why, they're just so interesting. Like the Truman Show, how they fake killed off his father so that Truman would be scared of water and then never leave his island. And at 6, no clear motive. We know that William Afton is the purple guy and that he is the Springtrap and that he is the killer, but what we don't know for sure is why. We know his boy gets chomped and then he sets out to put him back together as a robot, but he was killing kids before that even happened. What we don't know is why he's doing it. We know he sets out to create more Remnant in an effort to unlock the secrets to eternal life or something like that after he discovers Remnant, but why did he start killing kids in the first place? Did one act like Braith and just really piss him off? Was it just something he wanted to try? Is it some weird fetish? He clearly feels emotion since he felt sad after losing his son, sad enough to block out the woman Ballora represents from his life, but we don't know 100% why he killed Susie in the first place. Do you have any theories? Do you have any idea why he could have done it? Let me know in the comments because figuring this one out may be the key to solving the rest of the lore that we haven't really figured out already.
Halfway through into number 5, worst Easter ever. Okay, from an in-universe perspective, in Security Breach, Vanny brought back seemingly this Earth's most prolific killer. But from a story perspective, it also kinda comes out of nowhere and feels forced. And in a game sense, he also just looks terrifying and then sends all the broken animatronics after us. And lore-wise, Afton's back again. However, he's also not entirely back this time, considering how this version actually seems to finally be dead, however only functional because maybe the coded version of Afton's consciousness is inside the animatronic. No matter what, this shouldn't have worked. He shouldn't have been able to have a sentient code form possessed Vanny, but then also be able to be present in his actual body. Like what? Unless this entire time after getting springlocked, his consciousness was instantly turned into a code, and that was then controlling the Springtrap suit, and in a way I guess would make sense. I mean, it would make a lot more sense than him being possessed by the spirit of his son. But from everything we've gotten, including Ultimate Custom Night and the man in room 1280, he was possessed, but to be kept alive so he could keep suffering, okay? Meaning that none of this should have worked, but it did.
And for Scraptrap. Scraptrap is the same as Springtrap. Pink guy is purple guy, is Springtrap, is Scraptrap, is William Afton. There's an entirely separate debate online that is along the lines of William is Springtrap but Michael is Scraptrap or something like that, and it's just ridiculous. Why would that be true? The only Spring Bonnie suit we know of is the one that William was inside before the events of Pizzeria Simulator. For those of you who don't know, Scraptrap is the version of Springtrap you find outside of the pizzeria in the back alley, like where you find Scrap Baby, Molten Freddy, and Lefty. And in accordance to paragraph 4, you bring it inside so that when the pizzeria burns at the end of the week, everyone who needed to be set free with fire, since that's the only way to destroy remnants, can be set free. Scraptrap is just a further decayed version of Springtrap. It's not a separate character, it's not its own thing, it's not Michael or anyone new. It's Springtrap, it's William. They are all one and the same.
Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Xanthophobia. I mentioned how chromophobia was the fear of colors. Well, xanthophobia is a subcategory of that, particularly for the fear of yellow. And considering how William got springlocked thanks to a yellow suit, he could associate that color with that crime, meaning that he would fear Chica, explaining the change in Security Breach, as well as Golden Freddy, which explains why there is no Golden Freddy in Security Breach as well. I mean, there are obviously other explanations, but I think this could be one of them. I mean, like, come on, it always seems to be like it's a stretch to be afraid of a color. But this begs the question, is anyone who watches these videos afraid of a specific color? Because if you are, please let me know below. I'm curious about how you live your everyday life, especially if it's a primary color. But I feel like you're pretty safe if it's green, because I don't think green shows up in these videos pretty much. Because I can't wear green, otherwise I disappear. You don't see this because it's gone. So...
And 2 names. Springtrap has gone by many names, some being before the name was known, like when the Five Nights 3 trailer came out, some being just simple mistakes. However, they all existed, and technically you could also say that Springtrap went by all the names that Purple Guy did, since they're the same person, but I'm going to ignore that. Springtrap has also been known as, well, Springtrap, William Afton, Michael Afton, Scraptrap, Spring Bonnie, Golden Bonnie, and most interestingly, Hybrid. This name was brought on when the trailer for Five Nights 3 was released, and technically it was right. The fans assumed that Hybrid was in fact a hybrid of all the toy animatronics which he used to build himself, which could have been the inspiration for creation from The Joy of Creation. But in fact, Springtrap is just a hybrid of human and animatronic suit, not being entirely one or the other, hence why I refuse to put him in the scariest animatronics list, especially since I don't really find him that scary. But Amanda put him on when she took apart, but despite that, I still stand by my viewing. I stand by my reasoning, okay? He's not entirely an animatronic. He's still in the suit. We never see him die. Finally, in at number 1, oldie but a goodie. This suit is one hell of an old suit, not to mention how long William was stuck inside it, but this suit dates back all the way to Fredbear's Family Diner, which is crazy, and even if they had this technology when that diner was prominent, that makes me even more concerned about how this thing was Iron Man levels of advanced. And while the decay on Springtrap makes that evident, it confuses me as to how it started to break down when Golden Freddy, a springlock that is as old if not older than Spring Bonnie, seems fine in the first game. I think it's because those holes and rips were in fact made by William when he was trying to escape the suit. We see him trying to pry off the head, so it would make sense why he would have torn off bits of fur or even removed the whole foot in an effort to be set free. What do you guys think about the Springtrap decay? Let me know your thoughts down below.
In a 10 Princess Quest. The whole Princess Quest thing, its purpose was to lock Vanny away and prevent her from regaining control of her own body. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a fail-safe that allows her to escape? I mean, like, sure, they didn't expect a random kid to come along, figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of Afton and his plans, you'd think that he would have smartened up after at least 50 years. I don't understand. That's like having a self-destruct button on the bomb that you wanted to make sure nobody could stop. Or if Superman had like a kill me button, or just like had like a free kryptonite vending machine that he just put out in the middle of Metropolis. It's stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it a possible way to fail? One of the dumbest things that William has ever done. But he's also so goddamn lucky that it didn't backfire canonically. Seriously, what's the point behind having a way to undo your evil plans? This could just as reasonably actually been the canon ending to the game, even though we play as a kid the size of a 4-year-old. And the fact that it wasn't the canon ending, it's pure luck the way that that didn't happen, okay? Just like bury the third machine if you insist on doing this. In at 9, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa itself was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did, okay? I mean, it kind of sounds weird, you know, and also extremely unrealistic. Like, this guy just pops up in your VR headset, then takes over your body after you collected 16 digital VHS tapes, or cassette tapes, I guess technically. But then after he takes over your body, you end up killing for him, okay? That's messed up. And like, not even kind of, that's incredibly messed up. But also, like, how? I mean, like, she knows what's going on too. She actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk to her therapist about it. But like, Afton got lucky with specifically was that Vanessa has no willpower to actually sacrifice for the greater good, okay? I mean, like, at this point, I feel like it's fairly safe to infer that Jeremy from FNAF AR didn't go crazy because he just saw Glitch Trap. I think it's fairly reasonable to say that he got possessed. At this point, Tape Girl hadn't broken up Glitch Trap into the tapes yet, and he was probably just able to possess whoever he wanted. So if Jeremy did get possessed, and the possession worked in a similar way to that it did to Vanessa, Jeremy would at times be sentient and in control of his own body. So if he knew about Glitch Trap, maybe he didn't cut his face off because he was freaking out. Maybe he did it to try to kill the monster that was inside him. In at 8, Springlock suits. The Springlock suits in general are also something that William and even Henry both got extremely lucky with. Like, while Henry may not have like designed the Springlock suits, he certainly let Afton create them and then allowed for their use in the restaurants despite them being incredibly dangerous to employees, only putting them out of commission when someone eventually got hurt and not actually being proactive because, you know, they are literal death machines. You make separate animatronics and then you have separate costumes, okay? That's the right move, that's the smart move, that's the safe move. But these so-called businessmen thought, yeah, I'll put the safety of my employees at risk by making them wear a hot as balls suit filled with robot parts that even with the slightest bit of moisture will shoot those robotic parts right back to where your bones are. What can possibly go wrong? Like, you think that Willy Wonka has OSHA violations? Imagine FNAF's OSHA violations. Oh wait, actually, you don't have to, because we already did a whole list on that. Be sure you go check it out. But seriously, the fact that nobody sued them because they were being put in these things instead of, like, you know, much safer and cheaper options of, you know, a fabric suit is insane.
And at 7, no head.
So no head?
The suit doesn't have an endoskeleton head, get your mind out of the gutter. It's actually impossible for it too, since even with the crazy advanced tech that these places have, you cannot move an endoskeleton head as they are presented in the games away enough for a normal head that just barely fits inside to fit inside. This is also shown in the menu screens when William is trying to remove the Springtrap head. There is no form of robotic head present. It's his eyes and his meat. How on earth would the face operate in the Springlock suit if there was no proper head? Is it just a different form of robot or like a different arrangement of parts to get everything working more efficiently? Because if that's the case, why isn't that the case with every animatronic? If it costs the company less to manufacture, I'm sure William would be fine with it if not encourage it, since he gets his daily fill of child murder and he saves a little bit of money on the side, so might as well. Well, maybe it's more expensive, but if that's the case, I'm sure it's easier to just make a separate suit than paying extra for a specially designed suit that doubles as both animatronic and suits. Like, just make a separate one. You can still kill kids in it.
And at 6, Leave It to Fate. FNAF 6 was supposed to be the end of the Afton story. I was so looking forward to it. That's what Henry sets out to do in this game. Make sure that nobody remembered what happened there. However, this also figured that the first fire didn't work, so a second one surely will. And in fact, he was so confident in this plan for whatever goddamn reason that he actually let himself die in the process to leave nobody remembering what happened. But he didn't think that even if himself, William, and all their kids are dead, the parents of the victims still know. And as we learned from Security Breach in the duffel bags, there are other parents who remember it too. Like, it's a whole thing in the FNAF universe. They cite the missing children from the Pizzaplexes happening again. If Henry had stuck around to see if the job was really done, maybe William wouldn't have been able to possess Vanny and come back yet again and just kill more people. Henry should have lit the place up, smashed everything that survived, and then maybe you could have offed yourself. But at least make sure the job is done first. Halfway through into number 5, a blutophobia. This one I feel is kind of guaranteed, but a blutophobia is the fear of bathing. And I mean, if a leaky ceiling was enough to cause those spring locks to fail, imagine what getting in a bath would do for dear old Willie. I mean, there's not really a point in being scared of it now since you are one with the machine. They've already spring locked, you're already dead, basically. But this man is decaying or has been skinned alive by these robotic parts, so a bath would be very appreciated by anyone who has to be in your vicinity, because, you know, it probably smells atrocious. Like, worse than anything that the Bones crew would have had to deal with on that show. Even the Palant stuff, because that was yikes. But, I mean, could you blame William for being scared of bathing after getting trapped in an animatronic suit that collapsed because it got a little bit wet? And at 4, Sprung. So this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that made these suits, that handles the maintenance and has explained to every employee that has put on one of these things on like the proper procedure for the spring lock suits and making sure that it doesn't, you know, snap and then kill you, including the spring body suit that he uses to kill, ends up climbing inside the suit in a panic in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful. But somehow he's so smart that he didn't notice the leaking goddamn ceiling, which is already a health hazard, which you should have noticed beforehand. But then this also causes the spring locks that were active to snap shut, which would have killed him. However, this lucky mother hubber somehow managed to get possessed by someone who was so pissed at him that they kept him alive through all of his supposed to be deaths because they wanted William to suffer. Did they not realize how counterintuitive that is? The man literally wants to live forever, and you are enabling him to do so. Old Man Consequences is right. Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul so that Afton could finally die and then actually suffer in hell for all of eternity, instead of a goddamn dream version that you made up when he was recharging underneath the Pizzaplex, or before he showed up in FNAF 6, or whenever you were goddamn torturing him with all this fake hell you made up. God damn it!
3, Ultimate Custom Night. We can all agree at this point that Ultimate Custom Night takes place in hell, and we play as William Afton dealing with the torture we deserved for killing all those kids, but specifically the one we should not have killed. However, the confusing thing to me is that in Ultimate Custom Night, while we play as William Afton, we can also play against animatronics like Springtrap and Scraptrap, which are indeed versions of us. This is confusing to me, but it makes me wonder. Not about Willie being Springtrap, but about what the mechanics of this are. I suppose it could be that he did indeed create that monster, since he hid in the suit to feel more powerful when confronting the spirits, or perhaps it's because it was made of remnant. Or it could have just been that the characters available are the ones that Afton deemed his greatest failures in his mind. It's even more confusing that in the game code, Scraptrap is referred to as William Afton. Scott. I know you're clarifying that Scraptrap is William, but that throws a whole lot more wrenches into this than there should be for a final game in the original story. Come on.
But ultimately, in at number 2, baby. This guy is actually the luckiest motherfucker alive. This girl was killed by a robot her father made that was specifically designed to kill. She was then locked away in an underground storage unit where she was regularly shocked and tortured by scientists, technicians that William probably hired so that they could try and find out the answers to why she's possessed. She goes through all of this, is locked underground for like 45 years at least, and then goes on to try to make her father proud in FNAF 6. She literally says, quote, "I will make proud, daddy," while her father is literally in the building with her. Girl, this man is the reason you are dead. Literally, there is no debate about it here. This is 100% William's fault. And the fact that he didn't put a blacklist of people not to kill only makes this more on him. But you still want to make him proud? And finally, and at number 1, the Palladium rule. I will stand by this until the day I die. And you know what? I used to call it the Platinum rule, but now it's the Palladium rule because it's a meme and I love it. The most ridiculous but luckiest thing that has ever happened in FNAF was the fact that William Afton killed people in his own place of business and then and didn't get caught. I don't know if this was always his intention, but like, who the absolute living hell would think that this is a good idea? Seriously, even if it's a TV show, okay, How I Met Your Mother does have some good lessons. One of those is Barney's platinum rule, which is if you have to see the person every day because you work with them or they live in an apartment next door to you, okay, don't engage in some form of relationship, okay, because come a breakup, which is statistically probable, it just results in awkwardness and pain. And while this isn't the exact same thing, you are at this building all the time. Your name is a part of the company, so why would you think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else, okay? You ended up even getting banned while there was an investigation underway. I don't get it. And at 10, arachnophobia. Now, there isn't really any evidence to this since this fear is so incredibly odd, but since it's so odd and I won't really have another place to talk about this, arachnophobia is the fear of having peanut butter stuck to the roof of your mouth. Not the fear of peanut butter. Like, you don't even have to be allergic, just the idea of peanut butter being stuck to the roof of your mouth is chilling for whatever reason. And it's totally possible that William Afton might have had this phobia, but we can never really be certain, okay? It's interesting to consider. It makes him a little more human, albeit a slightly odder one, but I mean, this is a phobia for a reason. Maybe because the roof of your mouth is where like your nose connects to your mouth, or something similar. I don't know. Or maybe it could just be because William is a psychopath. Either rationale works for me. And at 9, aphobophobia. Aphobophobia actually is a fear that in my opinion makes sense, because honestly teens can be stupid and incredibly annoying. Yeah, that's right, aphobophobia is the fear of teens, which could help explain William's MO, where he chooses to kill kids instead of anyone older. Maybe because he's scared of the older kids and thinks that they could actually overpower him. Or in reality, maybe they'd end up killing him, because like I said, teens can be quite the severe pain in the ass. Or teens can be horrible, especially if they're hanging out at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Like, have you ever seen teens hanging around a Chuck E. Cheese? And if you have you ever seen them doing it because they like the establishment? No, they're doing it because they have some nefarious purpose in mind, whether it be vandalism, or to antagonize someone who's working there, or maybe just yelling at some children. Who knows? But they're typically never there because they just want to have fun. And at 9, gamophobia. Gamophobia is something that I'm getting closer to every single day. What is it, you ask? Well, dear viewer, the fear of marriage. Gamophobia is more than just being cautious or somewhat hesitant about making a big commitment. People who have this condition experience intense fear when faced with the reality or even sometimes just the thought of being in a committed relationship or marriage. For some people, negative or traumatic experiences in the past can contribute to an intense fear of commitment. Past relationships can also contribute to the onset of gamophobia. Toxic relationships, previous divorce, and infidelity can contribute to a fear of getting too deep into a new relationship, which could actually help explain one of the most curious parts of the series, Ballora. We don't know if William was ever married. We don't even know if these kids are biologically his, meaning that he could have adopted or straight up kidnapped Michael, Elizabeth, and Crankchild. So, a fear of marriage or commitment could explain why he created Ballora, so the kids would have a mother without William needing to commit, whether it be due to childhood trauma or a previous relationship. But considering that he's a serial killer, I'm gonna go with a childhood trauma. And at 7, calling the cops. Let's look at this logically, alright? Henry knew what was going on with Afton, and that Afton had some shady scenarios cooking in his brain. So if he knew that this man was up to no good, and he was fearing for his daughter's safety, why didn't he make the call to the police and be like, hey man, so this William Afton guy is like thinking about killing kids, and probably is the one that's been killing the kids that you're looking for. Like, I mean, sure, maybe you didn't have proof, but you could have certainly tipped them off, and then they could have, you know, found the proof. Come on, they could at least keep a closer eye on him, but you didn't. And instead, you did a whole load of other that in reality didn't do anything to stop William. I mean, you did one thing that put him out of commission for like 30 years, but again, that was only 30 years. You could have stopped him. You could have actually stopped him in his tracks, but instead you chose to keep your mouth shut. That is Afton's plot armor working overtime with no extra pay. And at 6, autophobia. The fear of being alone is known as autophobia, which is also a way to help remember that autobiography is one written by the subject of the book. However, William having a fear of being alone could explain a lot of the series. I mean, this man ends up creating a surrogate wife animatronic, has 3 kids despite not seemingly wanting them around until he can't have them around anymore, and then loses those kids and goes berserk. Well, I mean, like he wanted to and was planning on killing before they died, but then he really goes hard into it after they died. But it could also explain why he tasks Michael with going to find his sister's possessed robot while he's supposed to be trapped in a room alone, because interacting with his only son, in any form I guess, could help with this fear. It could also be that his multiple personalities all keep each other company, since I'm sure every single one of them is a killer if he has multiple, just because it's William, so of course they all would be.
And at 5, lie lures. He had to lure kids into the back room somehow, right? So dressed in the spring Bonnie suit, he told kids all sorts of things to get them backstage. We know he told Susie, the girl who would later possess Chica, that he had her dog that was actually still alive, as indicated by the bleeding dog carcass in the Fruity Maze minigame and the whole Chica the high school year scene where she says, "I told them someone ran over his dog," or something like that.
He'll be mine by the end of the day. I just know it. I told him that someone ran over his dog in front of my house.
So we know he lies to bring kids backstage, where he ends up killing them for, at this point, unknown reasons. Stuffs the bodies into the animatronics to hide them and then leaves like nothing happened. It's like that meme where Pennywise is talking to Georgie and he's like, "I have brand new Pokemon cards down here," and then Georgie crawls in. Like, you know the one? For me it would be something like, "I have information about Stephen Amell returning as the Green Arrow down here." Or like I once made one that said, "I have all the other Pokemon you can't get in Sword and Shield down here." And that one would honestly get me. Pokemon is the one game that shouldn't need a DLC, okay? Forgot this was a FNAF list.
In at 4, panphobia. While phobias usually refer to specific fears, like ablutophobia being the fear of bathing, sometimes fears are more general, like chromophobia being the fear of colors. But panophobia is the fear of everything, basically. In a way, it's the fear of a vague and persistent unknown evil. And this, while a bit intense, could explain why William had a psychotic break. The fear that something evil was lurking around every corner, yeah, that's a pretty rough one, and would definitely cause some damage. Maybe even enough damage that he thought that he would have to protect himself. I mean, children can literally be the worst humans on Earth, so I understand his target market on that front. Like, I wouldn't be able to do those things, I'm just saying that, like, I think that maybe William thinks that he's trying to do God's work by eliminating those that he sees as evil. Evil. I meant evil. And this phobia would help explain that quite a lot. Getting close to the end in number 3, first victim. They say that a killer's first victim is the most important, since it might indicate what really got them to start killing, or other psychological clues that they can use to predict his next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time. And while we may have talked about how Henry dropped the ball before, this was the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst of ways. Because like he started killing off kids, and then he sticks with that MO throughout the rest of the criminal career. Then like he also loses his kids after that. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't really suspect him of anything, even though her father did, is something that I fear. But ultimately, in at number 2, plutophobia. I genuinely believe that Afton had to have plutophobia. Not because he didn't want Pluto to be a planet, but because instead, plutophobia is the fear of money. And this man made all kinds of horrible business decisions. Killing people in his own restaurant, hiding bodies in the animatronics. I've gone over this in multiple times in multiple videos, but the only way I can explain it is if this guy was just straight up scared of money. It's like the only thing that in my mind really makes sense. Like, sure, you wanted to use it as a killing den for your homicidal tendencies. Sure, okay, but how about do that? And also have a profitable business, so your children don't feel the need to walk up to robots that you specifically told them not to touch. Or even enough, maybe just enough, to have a babysitter, making sure that they don't do stupid things, like walking up to the animatronics you told them not to, or running off to that place again, or stuff their siblings in animatronic mouths. Did that ever occur to you? Cause of course it didn't. Cause you must be scared of money. It's the only thing that makes sense. I've solved FNAF. And finally, in at number 1, robophobia. This is literally the phobia this game was made for. Like, sure, it wasn't actually the reason it was made, but seriously, this is the perfect fear for these games. While sure, the thought of mannequins can creep anyone out, robophobia is literally the fear of robots, and is surely the bread and butter of not only this series, but William as well. William must hate animatronics with a passion now. Since the victims possessed them, he got springlocked by one, he can only survive by being in one now thanks to his consciousness being sentient code. I mean, it's ridiculous. If he isn't scared of robots, it would be a miracle. And I think he kind of deserves to be scared of robots, you know? Since he's combined with one, it would make him constantly in horrific terror, which is something that I think we would all love to see, and understandably so. I mean, this is the reason I can't sleep half the time. This guy caused me to think about everything way too goddamn much. Location. The location of the various crimes does actually factor into its effectiveness, believe it or not. The idea that William was killing in his own Fazbear restaurants is a ridiculous concept that in reality should have gotten him sent to prison. The saying is something along the lines of like, don't crap where you eat, which some take literally, others take as don't date people you see on a regular basis, and in this scenario I suggest that it should mean don't kill people where you're seen on a regular basis, or you know, constantly, because it's your own business, especially if it's the business that like targets kids. And while yes, this doesn't instantly make you guilty, but come on, the first thing that anyone would do in this situation, not even a cop, would be question everyone who was working when whatever had happened, or whoever it was disappeared. And let's be realistic, an incident the likes of the missing children's incident from 1985 would ruin a business permanently. None of this somehow they stay open bullshit, because in the real world they would end up closing permanently, because no parent would want to go to a place where 5 kids went missing, especially when no bodies were found, which could maybe help them, but it certainly wouldn't help much. If Afton had any competitors, any at all, alright? Even this world's version of Chuck E. Cheese, Afton should have gone there. If he had any competitors, or literally anywhere else, would have made more sense. However, he chose to kill where he eats, and that's probably one of the worst decisions that he could have made. Well, aside from, you know, the killing in the first place. Animatronics. While the animatronics are an entirely other mistake, this time around I want to talk about how stupid it was to hide the bodies in the animatronics. Like, how the f*** did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would already ruin the place, especially when its focus is eating pizza. The heat from the animatronic insides would speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that they were leaking blood and mucus, as well as smelling like death. If this was real, and William getting away with it wasn't important for the plot, he would have been caught instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Hell, they even make bone-crushing sounds when they move. We should probably check this out. Oh look, turns out we found those missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest for the murder of Cassidy, Fritz, Jeremy, Gabriel, Susie. Boom! Instantly. I don't know how this wasn't an open and shut case. Straight up, William was so goddamn stupid that he shouldn't have made it to the first game. Not to mention how stupid he was by building the Funtime animatronics with these item containment chambers, as he was calling it, since the cops ended up questioning him about why he made those design choices in the sister location opening scene. Plus, he superpowered the jaw of Fredbear from Fredbear's Family Diner to end up giving it a jaw that accidentally killed his son. Absolute moron. William, not the son. It wasn't his fault that he got his head shoved in there. If he had put it in there himself, it would have been his fault, but he didn't. Enemies. Now, while William did choose a set of easy marks, since, kids can't really defend themselves against a dude in a part animatronic furry suit, but he's a moron for exclusively killing that demographic only. I don't know why he did that. Sure, it's easier on him, especially when he's fully combined with an animatronic, but Henry serves as the opposition to William, and the reason William ends up burning multiple times. It's not Henry's fault that he turned into Springtrap, but it's certainly his fault that he turned into Scraptrap, since this is most likely due to the FNAF 3 fire, and the FNAF 6 fire turned him into Burntrap. So Henry has definitely been a pain in William's side for ages. Killing Henry would have resulted in nobody being able to chase William, basically. Like, Michael might have figured it out, but he wouldn't really be in a position to do anything without Henry. Henry gave him the FNAF 3 job, probably, and definitely gave him the FNAF 6 job, so if William had just offed Henry after offing his daughter, he would have had a much easier time. At least, I'd think so. That's why every comic villain wants to kill the hero, right? Because if they do, they'll have a much easier time committing all their various crimes. So how is this any different? It shouldn't be. William is an absolute buffoon for not killing Henry when he had the chance. I'm sure it was Henry reporting him to the cops, like, you killed this man's daughter. Of course he's gonna have some form of vendetta against your ass. He's coming for blood and he actively tries to kill you multiple times. That's not something that you should have just ignored. You should have just killed Henry after his daughter, because honestly it makes sense. Then you kill his wife, or the mother of Charlotte, as long as she's in the picture, knows about it, and actually cares, because sometimes they don't. But mom's gonna go after anyone who wronged their child, okay? Oh, that's something to witness, I'm telling you. Even my mom is vicious as hell, and she's like the sweetest woman in the world. So, you just get rid of the family, alright? Especially when it's your business partner. God, you're stupid. And while William may never have been caught for these acts, that's simply because he couldn't get caught or the plot would make no sense. So ultimately, the game had to find an excuse for his ridiculous behavior. But William could have done wonders if he had just been slightly more intelligent and maybe actually thought about things. Killing kids in your own pizzeria is horrible for business, so do that somewhere else, okay? If he had, he wouldn't have hid the bodies in the animatronics, which would have prevented the kids from attaching their souls to the animatronics that they were stuffed into. Thus, William wouldn't have had to disassemble them, which accidentally released their souls, causing him to hide in his Springtrap suit. The Spring Bonnie suit would have failed without him inside, thus preventing Springtrap from being created, and William wouldn't have been sealed behind a wall for 30 years. During those 30 years, he'd still be possessed by the one you should not have killed, since they didn't latch onto an animatronic in the first place, they latched onto him, and he'd be unable to properly die still. But he'd have an extra 30 years to work on bringing his kid back to life. He wouldn't have needed to send Michael to get Baby from Afton Robotics' storage facility, and Michael would have ended up fine. Fazbear Frights wouldn't have opened, resulting in the place never burning down, and the FNAF 6 game wouldn't have needed to take place. There would have been no need to repair the company image in FNAF VR. William would have been probably a millionaire, and he could have used that money to study ways to bring his son back. Perhaps discovering Remnant along the way, similar to how Henry created the Ella doll in the novels. William could have poured his grief into something, watched it become possessed, and then worked on recreating that in a robot version of his dead children. If his children even died anyway. Since Fazbear's wouldn't have closed, he wouldn't have needed to open Circus Babies, resulting in Elizabeth staying alive. And since Crying Child wouldn't have seen her get scooped, he wouldn't fear the animatronics. Thus Michael not needing to put his head in the Fredbear mouth because he thought it was funny, because his brother was scared. His brother wouldn't have been scared, so Michael wouldn't have needed to do that. William also just wouldn't have supercharged Fredbear's jaw, so even if Crying Child did get his head in there, which again I guess would technically be possible, he still wouldn't have died because of it. All of this simply goes back to William's first mistake, which was choosing to kill people in his own establishment. If that first kill also wasn't his business partner's daughter, nobody would have been suspicious of him and everything would have gone his way. Okay? Afton is smart. However, he could have been a lot smarter at the start. which would have resulted in him having an easy time on his killing spree, but I guess that would make for a very interesting game series, would it?